Is Nomura, Tetsuya Nomura, God bless his soul, a good director? What's good, my fellow peasants? How you all doing? Now, this is in light of this news that's just come out. This is why I want to cover this video, because Tetsuya Nomura has been getting discussed a lot. This is probably one of the most heated discussions in the Final Fantasy universe right now. Are we a universe yet? Well, we are now. And it's been in article forums, Facebook groups, they've been talking about it, YouTube comment sections. I've been seeing it all over the place. I think there's been a lot of unjustified hatred even towards him. I'll cover that, I'll weigh in on that in a minute. The reason I'm doing this video now, 24 hours ago, or at the point I'm recording this video, Nomura did an interview saying that Final Fantasy VII Remake and Kingdom Hearts, the release of these two titles, quote, may still be a while. Now, when Tetsuya Nomura says that, guys, you know you're in for some trouble. You know that is not a good sign. And I honestly thought Final Fantasy VII Remake could be 2017. I thought it could be coming then. I did a poll and about 90% of you also thought that. But when Tetsuya Nomura says it may still be a while, holy shit. That alone, that quote alone, has made me think that 7 Remake in particular, we might not be seeing that until 2018. Now, I could be wrong. Again, I might be being a bit presumptuous. Nomura might have learned his lesson. He might be trying to not overhype fan expectations. But based on what we've seen in the past with Nomura, I mean, he's always used the same line: we're making steady progress. He's used it for 7 Remake and Kingdom Hearts in this interview. He also made it about Versus XIII. And with Versus XIII, there were often many quotes where it really implied that the product was far closer to being completed or being something that we could actually have, something tangible, than it ever really was. Versus XIII, that game never left the 25% completion mark. And yet Nomura would be saying things like, it's coming together, and really giving things that are hinting and implying that the product could be nearby. And of course we knew it was never anywhere near. So when that same guy comes out and straight up says, yeah, 7 Remake and Kingdom Hearts, yeah, that's still going to be a while, guys. I mean, at this point, I'm even scared for 2018. At this point, I'm just scared in total. I'm just fucking petrified, to be honest. Now, these games are going to happen. There's no chance they're going to be cancelled. The Square Enix building would be burning the next day if they ever said that 7 Remake is cancelled. So I think we're safe on that front, guys. It better not be cancelled, Square. I petitioned for this remake for 10 years. If you take it from me, I swear, I will get violent. Pitchforks will come out of the closet. Now, when Tetsuya Nomura comes out and says something like that, of course, it fans the fire. The same fire that's been raging since before Final Fantasy 15 even came out. That Nomura has this reputation that he cannot get games out the door. Nomura can't get games out. He can't get games out. He just can't get games out. And a lot of people say that. I think that is kind of true to a certain extent. He does have a reputation for it. But again, this is why I want to talk about, is Nomura a good director? I think this reputation is really unjustified. Especially when there is absolutely no doubt that Square Enix places way too much pressure on them, way too much pressure, way too much expectation. Project after project. I mean, the whole reason why he's got this reputation, why Versus XIII kind of got handed over to Tabata, was because Nomura was working on 4 different projects. I mean, there's so much expectation on this guy, and I don't even think he asks for a lot of it. Honestly, I think he gets lumped with it most of the time, especially with even the FF7 remake. We'll never forget when it came up and the director was Nomura and the crowd cheered, and the crowd cheered. So despite everything, despite the reputation that he can't get games out, there is love for Nomura. What he produces is phenomenal. And if we just go to the Final Fantasies that he's been a creative director for, we're talking 5, we're talking 6, 7, 8. He didn't do anything on 9, he did 10, 10-2, he did all of the Before Crisis, Advent Children, Last Order, 6 Advanced, Crisis Core, I mean, yeah, Crisis Core and Type 0. He was a creative producer on both of those. So he's even got a reputation, he's got a history of working closely with Tabata as well. 13-2, 13. Dissidia, he even chipped in on World of Final Fantasy, and obviously now KH3 and 7 Remake, and that's all just to name a few. So he's done a lot of fantastic work in this franchise, and I think that can never be overlooked. But, and here's the but, is Nomura a good director? I'm going to straight up and say, and before you hit the dislike button, hear me out, is he a good director? No. In fact, I don't even see this guy as a director at all. And when you look at his products, when you look at what his job was, he's actually been a director for so few Final Fantasy games. This is the thing, everyone talks about Nomura being a director. Is he a good director? Everything is in the context of a director, but guys, he actually hasn't been the director on most games, not officially the director. If you go through his list, he's pretty much set as the character designer. I mean, we know he has some of the dopest designs in Final Fantasy, but the core one is the creative producer. And there's a huge difference between a creative producer and a director, and this is the difference. This is where Nomura shines as a creative producer, someone who works on the game, as it implies, creatively, someone who works on the stories, who works on concepts, who works on ideas, who works on designs. That is where he flourishes. And that's what he's done most of. As for actually being the director, he's only done that for very few games. We're talking the 358 over 2 days, Kingdom Hearts, the Recoded, the smaller handheld games. As far as big AAA titles, he's never been the director. In fact, Versus XIII was actually looking like that was going to be his first really main core AAA title that he was going to be the director for. And that's where Nomura's flaws come out. And he does have flaws. We all have flaws. No one is perfect. This is the thing. I think some people who try to like Nomura try to over-defend him in every aspect. Nothing is his fault. No, he has no flaws as a person. And then the people who try to hate on him, they don't ever acknowledge all of the phenomenal work he's done. There's a middle ground. He's a man. He has his strengths, he has his weaknesses, and his weaknesses are in directing. With Versus XIII, I said this, guys, and I may have sounded a bit too harsh when I said it, is he dropped the ball. He didn't direct or coordinate that game well. And the reason I say that with Versus XIII is we have proof that he was constantly changing his ideas, his concepts. Now, he kept looking at it on a creative level rather than on an actual, let's start building this game, let's start coordinating. Someone who actually coordinates a team and starts pulling this all together. He was there focused, and he was supposed to be the director, and he's focusing on whether or not Versus XIII should be a musical. Now, all of that kind of thinking is the thought process of a creative producer. That's where his mindset is. But when you stick him in the director seat, that's when that becomes a flaw, because a director is far beyond someone who can just look at the game on a creative level. That's someone who has to delegate. That's someone who has to assign and coordinate a team. And not just the team for the story. We're talking about the animators. We're talking about the musicians. We're talking about the tech team. We're talking about the marketing team. Director encompasses a huge, very broad spectrum of responsibilities. And really, again, it's a role he's not had to do that much. He hasn't had to work. He hasn't been in the director driving seat a lot. That's what's really funny about these arguments online, is everyone's arguing about, is he a good director? Well, we've never actually really seen him direct a game from start to finish. He's always been in a position where he sits in and he just creatively jumps in and out of different projects. And he adds something phenomenal to each one of them, and he's never really been at the helm of something from the start to the finish, and that's why Versus XIII got handed over to Sabbath. I'm going to say it straight, he can't direct. He just cannot direct, guys. So is he a good director? No, he's a bad director. I love the guy, and he is a Final Fantasy legend, but he's not a good director. For anyone who's about to go and hit the dislike button on before that, Nomura himself admits it. Nomura himself! Don't hate me when the guy himself says he's a bad director. I'm not director material, said Nomura. Talk about his experience as director for the first Kingdom Hearts. Nomura himself prefers being on the front lines of developing rather than handling oversight of an entire project. In fact, he hates it. It stresses him out. And in Versus XIII, there was this whole thing about Nomura being stressed out, and I think some people took that a bit further. I think people were saying Nomura's depression. I don't think it ever got that bad. We have no proof of that. However, being the director of KH was a necessary sacrifice for Nomura. Most importantly, I had to have the final say on the content of the game. Basically, without it, I wouldn't have been able to make the game I want. I had to have Kingdom Hearts come out in the way I envisioned. So this is the really tight line that Nomura works, is he's a phenomenal creative producer, but sometimes when his creativity is so honed, so channeled, and he has such a exclusive vision for the game, it's hard to have a director on board. And you can see how that makes sense. If his creativity really does require him to take the helm as a director, then absolutely at a push and a shove he'll do it. But realistically, he hates it, he doesn't like it, and he says he's not good at it. So there it is, guys. The argument's put to bed. Nomura himself says he's not a good director. Now again, I'm going to stress for about the 4th or 5th time, this guy is fantastic in what he does do as a creative producer. And that's really where Square Enix need to keep him. No, they need to play him to his strengths. Tabata, for example, he actually was a very good director. He was fantastic at coordinating team. He came on board with the mess of a product that he had. In 3 years, he had to get that, realized. A game the size and scale of Final Fantasy XV. Yeah, Tabata's a director. He's director material. He worked with the tech team. He worked with the marketing. I mean, we saw the ATRs, and he really interacted with us, the fan base, and just the way he handled everything. I mean, the fact that Tabata announced a 2-month delay and the video somehow got about an 85% like ratio, that's phenomenal. That is director material right there. That's where Tabata thrives. Tabata handles a director role very well. But just looking at some of the broader, side of things, I think that with Nomura getting this reputation of the guy who can't get out games, yeah, a lot of that is because of this whole creative producer thing. But there is a whole other side to it. There is, everything is bigger than one man. This is what is when there's a team of 300 people, and there's the big boss at the top who's making calls. Even if we just look at Yoichi Wada, there's this whole thing about Nomura, got his bad reputation because of Yoichi Wada, and Yoichi Wada, who was the head executive of Square Enix, and it's his fault, he was bad. I mean, that's not even true. Yoichi Wada, he's the whole reason why Final Fantasy XIV is the success it is. Yoichi Wada, he was the one who pretty much gave the entire thing of Final Fantasy XIV to Yoshida, and gave it to him and said, right, this is now your puppy, you walk in it. He gave the team that resource and that independence to really work on a vision. And that's why Final Fantasy XV was a success. Yoshida made Final Fantasy XIV a success. So again, it's not as black as white, as Wada is bad, Wada is good, Nomura is good, Nomura is bad. A lot of it comes down to even just the economic climate of gamings at the time. What's happened? The success of a game. Did it do bad? Did it do good? Again, Final Fantasy XIV flopped before Wada made that call and gave it to Yoshida. And that was a huge reason why Versus XIII got backbenched. After 14 flopped, Square Enix lost a lot of money, and the future of the Final Fantasy franchise at that point was, you know what I'm saying, guys. But all of that aside, a huge part of why Nomura is stigmaed with the he can't get games out is because they released trailers too soon. This has been rabbited, this has been parroted all across the internet of late. It's becoming prolific of late. Game developers showing stuff way too early. Way too early. And if Final Fantasy VII Remake is, and Kingdom Hearts is still a way off, both of these games are a victim of that yet again. Versus XIII was a huge victim of that. And it's not just Square Enix, there are other games, games that get teased. They give you a teaser when the game is still 3 years off. And this has to stop. This is why Nomura, who is unjustifiably having his reputation tarnished, this is the whole reason why. If the marketing team, if Square Enix hadn't made that stupid decision to show Versus XIII off, again, it was stupid. The game wasn't even in production and they showed it. If they hadn't have showed any of that, Frustrated Jacob has said this, many other Final Fantasy YouTubers have said this, if they hadn't have shown those Versus XIII trailers, none of this would have happened. None of it. I mean, literally none of it. There would have been no backlash. There would have been no angry fan base. There would have been no people saying, oh, I prefer Stella, I prefer Luna. There would have been no expectation and anticipation. If they just came out and released Final Fantasy XV or shown us the first trailer in 2015 or 16 and then released it even a year later or 2 years later, and even then I think that is way too early. It's been shown many times with games like Fallout 4. I think Fallout 4 was about 6 months from its first trailer. Showed its first trailer, 6 months later it was out. And that was a huge phenomenal success, and it was the same with Watch Dogs 2, and that came out 5 months later. And Fans were really happy. 6 months, let me know if you agree with this, guys. 6 months is what we would all want. 6 months has been shown to be the most optimal, and it just makes sense from just a marketing perspective. When you show a first game trailer and it's coming out in 6 months, 6 months is the time frame where you can maintain a hype train. You can keep the game excited. People will still be excited from the first trailer, and the hype train is important, and the hype train converts into sales. And 6 months is optimal. You can keep it going. People will still be hyped for a game if they only saw the trailer for it 6 months ago. And the excitement that it's coming out in only 6 months, because as gamers we're fucking tired. We're fucking tired. Listen, Square Enix. Listen, every game developer. I think the worst one is Ubisoft for this. We don't want you to show us a trailer if it's still 3 years off. We don't really even want to see a trailer if it's a year off. Okay, a year is still kind of bad. A year to wait. It's exhausting to wait a year. But I mean, even then, that would be 3 times better than what we are getting, because we're getting trailers come out for games where they're still 3 years off. And if Final Fantasy VII Remake, if that actually is coming out in 2018, which this was strongly implying, again, that's the 3 years again, and it's exhausting. I am a person, as a YouTuber, and just generally as a person who enjoys the hype train. I actually enjoy it. I'd say more than the average person. But even I find 3 years exhausting. Most other fans and most people who really don't like the hype train and they don't engage in sort of the whole theories and reading the news and catching up on it, to them, it just loses interest. At that point, they're not even interested anymore. 3 years is enough time for someone to go from being really excited of a trailer to just plain out, you know what, I'm too bored for even waiting for this game to come out, I've just given up on it. I mean, it's even parroted here. E3 2016, pretty much the overall consensus was games are being announced too early and something needs to change. And there's a lot of people replicating these same kind of feelings. And it doesn't just make sense from, because you're releasing these trailers, what is it to do? Is it to excite fans? Well, no, there's a negative side to that. It's exhausting fans. And there's even a darker connotation to this still. You release these games, even before they've started development. Sometimes we're getting trailers when the game is still at a conceptual stage, and then that just leaves no room for mistake. When the gaming climate is changing as frequently as it is, I mean, the amount of games that have been cancelled, it got the fans excited and it just got flat out cancelled, and it can happen at a drop of a hat. No, it did with Versus XIII. They went at Versus XIII, Final Fantasy XIV flopped, boom. They had to cancel it. And that could have happened with VII Remake. For all you know, Square Enix Final Fantasy XV could have flopped in sales. Luckily, it's hit 6 million now. So that shows that the retailers have bought another million since the 5 million in 24 hours. So again, it's amazing. There are still people arguing that those 6 million could still be sat on a shelf. And it shipped versus sold argument is still raging. Guys, if the retailers have bought another million, they don't buy another million if 2 or 3 million of the 5 million that shipped in 24 hours are still sat on the shelf. But I'm not going to get into the whole shipped versus sold. It's a fucking stupid argument anyway. A sell is a sell. To a retailer, it's a sell regardless. If Final Fantasy XV hadn't done that well, if it had flopped, let's say, if it had completely crashed through the floor, you may have had to have cancelled FF7 Remake. Now, that would have been career suicide. It would have been suicide for you, Square Enix. And the thing is, even if it didn't get cancelled, even if these games that show trailers at a conceptual stage, even if they happen, even if they do happen in 3 years, even if they don't get cancelled and everything goes well, it still pisses fans off because in 3-4 years, hardware changes, designs changes, concepts change. And that pisses off fans as well. And there's no reason why it shouldn't. The whole reason why you released those trailers at that stage was to get people interested in that product. Even though they didn't know much about it, you had them hooked, and now they're never going to see it because you've changed it so vastly because you just released it too early. So you get what I'm saying, guys. I don't need to go anymore. I hope that answers the question about Nomura. Is a good or bad director? I don't even think he's a director, and I don't even think he should be a director. I don't think that's where he flourishes. I think he really works at exactly where he's been as a creative producer. Keep him on a creative level. Square Enix, stop releasing trailers early. If this is true that FF7 Remake is still a way off, I'm going to straight up say it. I've never been more hyped in my life than after I saw that FF7 Remake trailer, but if this is true, you released it too early. And in fact, you know what, I'm just coming out to say it, they did. I know they did. The FF7 Remake, for anyone who doesn't know, quick fact, Kitase actually made the first remake trailer in isolation with about a team of 6 or 7, and they literally just sat down for a good month or two and they just slapped that together. And the whole reason they slapped it together was to take it into a boardroom to show it to Square Enix to see if they would have interest in starting a 7 remake. That is literally the story of this trailer. This trailer here. It was made purely to see if they could grasp an interest. There was nothing. There was nothing made, and that is why Nomura's name was on it as director at the end. And Nomura came and said, "Am I really the director? I didn't know I was the director. No one told me I was the director." It's because when they put this together, they kind of just slapped it on. It was done so conceptually. There was no interest to make a 7 remake. So there it is, guys. That's how I feel about the whole debate. Let me know, do you agree or disagree about I mean, there's nothing really to agree or disagree about Nomura, but let me know what you think about games releasing too early. Do you think the trailers are coming out way too soon? How are you going to feel if the 7 remake and KH is still a way off, and that means 2018? Let me know in the comment section below. Until the next video. Oh, come on. Just come out already. Why? Why did you do this, Square Enix? God, I just want it so bad. Oh, fuck. Tondo will go overboard. Oh! In what year? Greatness awaits. What year?
What took you so long? Been a long time. Too long. Not much longer.
Why the fuck you lying? Why you always lying? Oh my god, stop your fucking lying.